So today we will be talking about what it would take to decarbonize the grid by 2035. Q&A will be kept for the closing drinks. However, also to wake you up a little bit, and if you're watching live, you can also participate. I want you to ask to stand up in case you're working towards decarbonizing the grid, be it indirectly or indirectly. You can all stand up as well. And now, if you are really sure how to do this, you can sit down. You're super sure. Right, I think this is why we have the panel today. So you can all sit down again. Hope you're awake, paying attention. So Mariana, I'd like to start with you. So flexibility is often seen as the magic word in this discussion, right? So how can we ensure demand and supply side flexibility in order to maintain security of supply when we increasingly incorporate renewables into the grid?
Okay, so I can start with that one. I think one of the major challenges going forward is indeed guarantee that balance and supply will be balanced real time. And with the increase in renewable generation and distributed energy resources, we all know that this becomes a challenge because we are talking about intermittent loads. And so DSOs need to turn into new ways to balance supply and demand. But I think before jumping into those new tools that they need to address, I think we first need to be sure that we are in control and have visibility in our infrastructure. So in order to be able to develop these tools, we need to have visibility on the assets that we are managing. And having visibility means that we have access to the data and we can manage it in an automated way. And this is also a challenge per se, because especially when we are talking about the increasing boom in distributed energy resources, we are talking a lot of intermittent load that is being connected to low voltage. So low voltage is starting to become the bottleneck of all of these, and we need more tools to address this. So trying to give some concrete examples also from EDP's perspective. And just to put in context that EDP Group, at EDP Group, we currently manage around 400,000 kilometers of networks, which is a relatively big challenge to handle. I think first on the visibility. So talking about the company from our portfolio, PlexiGrid. So PlexiGrid is a Spanish company that develops a platform that has a data-driven way to manage the grid. So they are able to, through their platform, allow for end-to-end grid visibility, allow for real-time monitoring, and allow also for flexible management. So if you move away from the traditional set and forget approaches where you build your infrastructure and you don't have visibility on the built infrastructure, you can build really nice tools around and develop new business models around this. So I think first things first, we need to have visibility on the assets that you are managing, and tools like PlexiGrid help a lot on this one. Then, addressing directly the topic you were mentioning, I think flexibility will be a key part for this, of course. So at EDP, we are starting to do our first approaches to flexibility services, also a lot driven by regulation that is starting to push for this type of initiatives. And if we think that DSOs, if we think about a stressed network and congestion network, and that DSOs can incentivize, meaning that they can pay some asset owners that have some flexible loads on their side that they can manage. So if these asset owners, these flexible service providers can respond to these incentives, so then we are able to adjust these loads and unlock the stresses on the network. So I think flexibility will be a very light light capex, very light capex way to ease the constraints on the network, and should be for sure a key piece to explore.
Thank you, that's great. At Lunar Energy, we also play an important role in terms of the flexibility aspect. Can you elaborate a little bit on that, also relating to the question?
Sure, and thank you very much for having me. Great answer, by the way. I think I agree with most of what you said. At Lunar Energy, we think about grid decarbonization as solving the demand problem, solving controllability of demand. As you said, intermittency, you cannot rely on renewable energy sources. You cannot dispatch them or control them, aside from, obviously, I like pumped hydro coming from Scotland. We have a lot of pumped hydro, I grew up with it. But by and large, this is about a demand control problem, and we see a couple of key things that really underpin that demand, flexibility of demand. We think, when at the business, we speak a lot about implicit flexibility and explicit flexibility. And what I mean by that is implicit flexibility is controls that energy companies, energy retailers can put in place, from time of use tariffs, some sort of dynamic tariffs, which affect demand, and explicit flexibility, where you have grid service programs that distributed energy resources can play into. We think both are really, really important, and you can't have a considered approach without thinking about both sides of that equation. Now, the thing that underpins it all, and you talked about data and visibility. Let's get the basics right in terms of smart meter rollout, half-hourly settlement, and enabling energy retailers like EDP and many others in the room to deliver smarter, more interesting, more innovative customer offers, but also customer offers, customer tariffs that enable the DER rollout. We're not going to get distributed energy rollout at the residential scale if customers cannot afford to participate, or the energy retailers do not have the capability to offer those solar storage tariff solutions, as an example. So there we go.
Thank you. You mentioned here need customers, and we've heard this a lot today, the role of customers and also consumers versus prosumers. So it's thought by 2050, perhaps earlier, the majority of household demand will be able to be provided by prosumers. So to what extent, and again, Ed, let's start with you, but to what extent do you think this is feasible? And if it's feasible, what is needed in order to transition these now consumers to prosumers in a decarbonized way?
That's a tough question. I was going to try and get to the very end before we drop the regulation word, but I think it may be a good time to talk about regulation for a second here. So from the prosumer's perspective, there are a couple of examples to bring in. There are, in Australia, in the United States, particularly in California, huge PV rollout. Now, taking California as an example, there has been significant PV rollout at residential scale, but distributed or distributed storage, residential storage, has lagged behind. Currently about 14-15% attachment rates in California. They've just enacted a rule, NEM 3, so moving from net metering to net billing, and those attachment rates are forecast to go up to 95%. So the prosumers are going to be more of have more ability to participate in the grid, support the grid, reinforce the grid, and so on. I think the other side of that question, in terms of how do we turn consumers into prosumers, is a harder one. And I think that, back to my original answer, or my answer to the first question, you need to make consumers able to participate in the grid. You need to make consumers able to participate through innovative customer offers. We're seeing some really exciting things across Europe in terms of solar, storage, and tariff offers, where you have no money down, you have a monthly tariff or a monthly fat fee, a subscription service. Those are a really good way to avoid that significant capital-intensive investment up front. The technology is there, the software is there, the business models are there because we've seen it and it's proven in various European countries. It just needs wider rollout, underpinned by that word, regulation.
Thank you. And Julien, I saw you nodding as well. What is your view on that, and perhaps also linking it to the activities from TokWise?
Yeah, I would say I fully agree with what you say, that we need to find a way for the producers to be integrated to the markets and to be an active players, which is not the case today. What we see is that in the coming years is going to have an explosion of prosumers. Everybody with a field, a roof, is willing to have some solar productions with TokWise. So we are headquartered in Bulgaria. We are working with with a sanctuary which is installing some solar panel, and it wants to be an active market player. So we see this everywhere. And I think we are going to quickly be in situations when they will have more installed capacity than peak demand. And that's already the case in Netherlands, for example. And what's happening is that when at noon you have more solar which is injected into the grid, and the problem is that the grid has to activate some flexibility mechanism to absorb this excess of energy. So it's more prosumer can be harmful for the grid. That could be counterintuitive, I would say. And so I fully agree, we need to find a way to integrate those customers, that they can become active customers, and definitely maybe a first step will be just to give access to the data, to accelerate the deployment of smart metering data, etc., etc. I'm based in Belgium, and I'm a prosumer. I have solar on my rooftop. I don't have access to my data, no idea about my productions, no idea about my consumptions, etc. I think in Germany, deployment is very low as well. In France, is very low as well. So I guess that could be a good first step to try to accelerate this move.
Exactly, thank you. And we'll come back on the regulations at the end. I think you all have quite a lot to say about regulations and what excites you and what you look at with dread. Perhaps, Kristjan, to have also the Estonian perspective on this. I know for Estonia, especially with solar, the prosumers also are expected to play a major role. What are some of the challenges there that you're seeing from Enefit or in general? And what are the chances and opportunities there?
Yeah, maybe just to highlight that our, let's say, models and predictions say that around 25% of the problem will be solved by rooftops and maybe behind the meter offerings. 75% of the problem needs to be solved still from the perspective of the big players. And I mean, in Enefit Group, we obviously have quite a nice portfolio of green production kicking in. We have oil shale based let's say production of the power as well, which is actually quite flexible, which we can use to participate on different markets, including the AFRR and FCR and MFRR type of markets. But of course, I mean, when we look at the interest from the society and from the people, then of course this rooftop topic is quite important. And what are the challenges? So one thing is quite simple. We need to get rid of the old ways of polluting the maybe the environment. We have invested and we are planning to invest quite a lot in different technologies to transform our old technologies, production technologies, into something that is carbon neutral. And when it comes to let's say wind-based or solar-based production, then of course we are considering the batteries, both short-term, but also the long-term batteries in the forms of pumped hydro. So this is something that gives the society the efficiency to play or give the potential to be actually flexible.
Thank you.
Can I just add a comment
Exactly,
on
yeah.
Julien earlier comment? So you were mentioning the big boom in the prosumers, and I totally agree that they will grow exponentially, and we need to guarantee that we won't have a burden there. I think one thing that is missing to be addressed, or we need to push more for it, is actions to take a more active control over demand. So when we think on the scenarios to reach the climate goals defined in Paris, there is the consensus that we need around 500 gigawatts of installed capacity of demand-side response. And as of today, we are nearly around 10% of that. So clearly, we need to bring initiatives around this topic much faster, and to guarantee that these initiatives are being rolled out to take a more active control over demand. And for instance, there are several ways to address this topic, but I can also comment on a practical example on EDP Group, and also one of our most recent investments at EDP Ventures. So we recently invested in a UK-based company called Mixergy. At the end of the day, they are an intelligent hot water tank, simple as that. But if you think of an aggregator that pulls together all of these several hot water tanks that are installed out there, and that have a very relevant energy capacity stored among them, and if we have an aggregator that pulls all these loads together and is able to provide frequency responses to the grid, I think those are the type of initiatives that we need to push for, and that needs to be rolled out as an example of these more active control of demand-side responsive services.
Go ahead.
No, and just to top up, I fully agree. And I think and that's my, I'm saying that from a technical perspective, I would say one big challenge I see with all those new flexibility initiative, that right now the flexibility market is a market which is governed, let's say, by TSO, super centralized. I hear some thought this afternoon about some startup trying to enter those markets that are super closed right now, and there is a lot of initiative that will be on the local level, and I mean, flexibility is going to be decentralized, and how tomorrow we are going to coordinate the actions of the washing machine, the battery at an industrials, together with a big storage capacity of renewable, etc., etc. I think interoperability and communication between systems will be key, and I think right now there is some working group, of course, we're working on that, but I think there is a need to accelerate the collaborations between the various entities, between the various startups, between the various ecosystems, to make sure that it will happen, because that will be a blocking point at a certain point.
Thanks, Julien. And if we talk about this evolvement and also the increasing complexity, we also see this on the side of producers, where they really need to evolve their portfolio in order to go with this decarbonization of the grid, which also obviously brings in the significant challenges. So what tech developments and innovations are needed to facilitate the management of such increasingly complex portfolios? And here, whoever feels like it, please go ahead.
I mean, maybe I can jump in here, and I want to build off your answer there. I think the Mixergy example is great. Mixergy is a great company, UK company, where I'm based as well. That is one OEM that does a brilliant but specific use case in the hot water tanks. There are many, many OEMs on the market in hot water tanks alone. There are many OEMs in ESS, in battery storage. There are many OEMs in EV charging. That's a headache. If anyone in this room has ever been on site and installed a battery, I have. I haven't actually done the install, I'm not an electrician, but I've been there many, many times. If anyone has been and seen the installation of EV chargers, there are real complexities in getting them installed. There are real complexities in getting these devices commissioned. And when we start talking about commissioning, that's when we start talking about data. data consistency between different DERs becomes a critical enabling factor or blocking factor for the flexibility that we're all talking about on stage. Standards and a standards-based approach to DERs and a standards-based approach to the software that controls those devices is absolutely critical to unlock flexibility at scale. One thing we do at Lunar Energy, quick plug for the business, our Lunar grid share platform does manage multiple device types and simplifies and streamlines all of the different data points for fleet owners, fleet operators to manage these complex portfolios. Now, we specialize in residential devices. We've seen the technology working in the C&I space. So there's good grounding at the C&I space that these multi-device type, multi-asset class VPPs can work. The challenge now, and I see the enabling factor now, is really the energy retailers, the utilities. So, the EDPs of the world, the Enefits of the world, taking the lead as the kind of centralizing force for rolling or enabling the rollout of these devices to their customers with innovative customer offers or wrapped by innovative customer offers. I think without that, it's going to be an uphill battle for the industry and the rollout of wider DERs.
Thank you. You addressed Enefit and EDP here. So how do you see your role here, indeed, in reacting to what Julien just mentioned?
Well, we did metering rollout in, 2016. We completed 100%, so we have a little bit of data to play with. And when it comes to Estonia, this data is actually freely accessible, not freely, in a really nice controlled way, accessible to the third parties as well. So come and play. Our TSO is definitely happy finding new players on the market and finding good use for the data. But I absolutely agree that the ICT and data collection and using the data for different things is sometimes good, sometimes a little bit dangerous as well. But that's not the panel, right? About yeah. What about you?
No, I think we agree. So we are aligned with your view. So it's all pieces of the same puzzle, and you need to have approaches on the data, again, on the visibility, and manage it in the most automated way possible. And then you need to have technological solutions to be able to boost the additional services that are needed to balance the grid. But it's a kind of a combination of having visibility and having the right tools in place to manage the grid in the most efficient and decarbonized way possible.
And as you say, yeah, that I think that data is the ground foundation for everything. So speaking about TokWise, we are into artificial intelligence. So definitely when we start our business, we made a decision between, okay, do we want to start with doing some machine learning, modeling, etc., or working on the data? And we spent 2 years working on the data because it's super important to have some data quality, etc., and to be able to control it, to be able to leverage this kind of technology, which I believe can really help put together some data, extract some signals, and devise some strategy, which today and definitely tomorrow in the energy sectors, when we talk about portfolio management and trading, considering all the various assets of a portfolio that has to be managed, production, storage, consumptions at every level, just a human is impossible to make the right decision. So you need to leverage some algorithms to do that. And I see there is already a lack of data scientists in all industry, and I can tell you to find some energy data scientists is something almost impossible. So what we are doing here at TokWise is what we are taking some data scientists and training them. But Yeah, definitely to try to, together with the data, to try to develop the right competency and the right knowledge to have more people able to leverage those data will be quite important in the future.
I wanted to agree firmly that energy data scientists are very, very, very important and hard to get hold of, and expensive when you do, but critical to what we're doing here. One thing, I can't remember who mentioned it, but a couple of stories from Lunar Energy's experience and speaking to energy retailers and providing those energy retailers the keys to a group of dispatchable, flexible assets. And thinking about, you show them the group of different assets, a complex multi-asset portfolio. And often the questions we get asked is, how reliable is this? If you say we can deliver you a clip of 1 megawatt, is it 1 megawatt, or is there going to be a derating factor? And what does that derating factor, what's it composed of? We know there are thousands of assets in this group. Which of those assets are online? Which of those assets have customers that actually have energy requirements tomorrow? And so our predictions that we make for home load and customer energy requirements tomorrow are critical, right? They become critical reliability factors in us convincing energy retailers or utilities that, yes, when we say we can deliver 1 megawatt, we can deliver 1 megawatt. So there's a complete paradigm shift moving from a few very large assets that have I wouldn't say a higher degree of reliability, but it's a more well-known language to understand and describe the availability of these assets and the flexibility of these major grid-connected assets. It's a huge shift to then saying, well, here are 10,000 devices. Here are 10,000 different devices spread across a geographic area that we have to build essentially a reliability model around to get the utilities, get the energy retailers comfortable that this service provision is viable, workable, safe, secure, reliable. It's a big challenge. I see some benefits, or not rather some benefits. I see some progress towards that, but it's going to take time to get the flexibility off-takers comfortable. Not every flexibility off-taker is comfortable yet. We're getting there though.
Thank you. Then let's move on to the next question. So Ed already gave a little bit of a hint that we were going there, which is the hot topic of regulations. And let's here talk about the different regulations. So we're talking about market reform, market design, data exchange, but also cybersecurity, the latter, which was called earlier in one of the talks, one of the only topics that TSOs treat with any urgency. So perhaps here, what are some of the regulations that you are looking forward with hope, that you welcome and you think will make a positive change? And which regulations do you think are tricky or even problematic? Mariana, do you want to start us off?
I can start with that. As I was saying previously, I think we are seeing some good advances in the terms of flexibility. So in what concerns flexibility services, we are having already the support from the regulator, and EDP group is starting to move forward in this front. So we are having obviously we have to take into consideration that then it depends a lot of local markets, and there are more advanced countries like UK than the others compared to Iberian market. But still, there is space to be done, and we are moving in the right direction. I think there. What I think there is still a lot to push for is, especially with the deployment and the growth of the exponential growth of renewable assets. And when we think about connecting them to the grid, there is still a lot to be done in this. So there are several delays in connecting the renewable generation to the grid. This obviously is vulnerable due to speculation, regulation, politics. So I think on this, and especially if we want to achieve a net zero target, there is a lot of work to be done in this field. And I would also add that maybe because up to now, DSOs have been evaluated a lot in terms of their commercial losses. But if we are moving into a more into a network and an infrastructure that needs to accommodate more intermittent resources like renewables, distributed energy resources, and the grid will be managed in a completely different way. As Ed was mentioning, we are in a shift of paradigm that needs to be addressed, and for that we need to have the right incentives in place. So maybe we need to guarantee that, or start to thinking that DSOs should be able to explore their networks on with much bigger loads being explored. But for that, there will be additional losses, and we cannot have the DSOs being remunerated according to their commercial losses. Otherwise, we don't have the incentives aligned, and we can't have the grid of the future as we need to have it.
Kristjan, I see you smiling, so please react.
Yeah, okay. Good and bad in the regulation. So what I see good things happening right now. There was a lot of discussion around the market, let's say reforms and things as the reaction to the energy crisis in Europe. I think the discussions are going in the right direction, especially when it comes to harmonization of the different markets and the other pillars that the Euroelectric, for example, has proposed. What we see as problematic is that also as part of the same problem, there has been a lot of weird local regulation initiatives happening, and which are sometimes taking us a couple of steps back from, let's say, fulfilling the goals of the decarbonization and looking, how to say, the ways how to approach this problem. So I think from the regulatory point of view, we of course expect and value a lot of collaboration with the different market players, and also the stability and openness to go forward with our common let's say interests. So different things are happening, good things are happening, but also some maybe more concerning things on the local levels are happening as well.
And when you mention the local levels, any specific types of regulation that raise particular concern, or just in general you see developments that maybe deviate a little bit?
Yeah, I think the main thing is when on the local levels there is certain how to say deviations from the general rules happening, to whether to try to protect the customer, however it doesn't maybe help always. So I'm referring this type of activities. So I mean, all of the governments are thinking in the Europe how to protect the customer, but also centrally there is happening a lot. But some of the governments are running a little bit ahead with the changes, and sometimes they don't bring the desired effect.
Just to say, yeah, fully agree. I think the reform of the market design is definitely going in the right direction. I think everybody has been afraid, at least from our side, for a couple of months, to a market that will be more open, with this idea of marketizations, to have more players on the market, to keep a short-term market, to keep the merit order curve, the way how pricing are calculated, etc. I think it's good. We are going in the right directions. Yeah, what my fear, and I think lot of players as well, it's any protective measure that can be put in place if there is another energy crisis in a couple of months. Potentially, I don't know, Sweden can, again decide to cut the supply of energy to Europe, or France can decide to put some specific restriction that will go totally in the opposite of this idea of the market. And I think it's something which is driven by consumer protections, but also fear and politics. And yeah, I guess we need to try to move fast with these market reforms to make it happen, and to have an ecosystem that can support it.
I think there's a neat example, speaking to your point, Kristjan, that there's been some strange local manifestations or executions of market design or interpretation of the regulations. So the recent EU directive, which mandated that energy companies above a certain level need to offer some level of dynamic tariff, is great. That is a good regulatory change. That's a good direction for the policy. The challenge is that's pretty toothless. It doesn't do anything if you're Germany and you don't have any smart meters. You compare Italy 80%, the UK down at 20% or so smart meter rollout. Estonia 100% a long time ago, to Germany with no smart meter rollout. How can you need a collective or a joined up level of thinking for the market design to actually embed or improve the way that, for example, DERs can participate, or we can control that through implicit flexibility. Time of use tariffs, for example. I talked about implicit flexibility earlier, and that huge opportunity, and at Lunar Energy we see that as an increasing opportunity. Everyone talks about explicit flexibility and grid services, market grid services. We think that's really important. Of course, we play in those markets as well, but implicit flexibility is the ability to, through time of use tariff, to avoid those peaks, to get your customers off those peak times in the evenings. Without half-hourly settlement, without smart meter rollout, without interesting tariffs, or at least without being able to expose the wholesale price position to the DERs and have an optimization solution for optimizing those DERs around those price signals, we're not going to see the benefits from new regulation. So I think to summarize, there have been some positive steps and good direction in terms of regulations, but it's often disjointed and it often lacks consistent application at the local level, and it's toothless if it doesn't come with a sort of comprehensive suite of change. I think I'm perhaps being a little bit too enthusiastic about the ability for a comprehensive suite of changes. Stuff takes time.
Thank you. And I know that for Lunar Energy, also cybersecurity regulation is a important topic.
Totally, cybersecurity regulation is the thing that in a contract discussion to get you in the room with me, it's the thing that isn't discussed until the very end, and it becomes the biggest thing in a contract discussion, or it's discussed right at the beginning, and it becomes a really painful thing in the contract discussion. Cybersecurity, especially when we're talking about small residential scale distributed assets, is so critical. You have assets, different devices from different OEMs from different countries with differing positions with regards to data security, having servers in different countries, delivering that data to front ends in different countries for different customer bases. Cybersecurity is critical. Any software player and any OEM and any energy retail utility has to discuss cybersecurity upfront and get it right.
Recognizable, or different thoughts on cybersecurity?
Well, we have 6 minutes to go, and we are between the wine and yeah. This topic requires definitely a separate panel, and all I can say is yes, cybersecurity is important, and whenever we collect data, we must be sure that nothing harmful will happen with that, or with the help of that data. But it's a complex topic. It is something that I think all of the let's say players on the market are working with and are by today already aware of the impacts that may happen when this topic is not taken seriously.
Thank you. I'm sure the conference organization has taken note of the panel that will be on next year on cybersecurity. So we've spoken about the different needs and challenges in terms of what is needed to decarbonize the grid. In the panel question, the year 2035 is also mentioned. So to wrap up, I want to ask you some final thoughts on what are really crucial challenges that you think need to be solved in order to reach that specific deadline of 2035, which we know, some know there are different years mentioned, but is needed in order to reach net zero by 2050. Julien, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, I think for me, critical challenge is how we can create a market where everyone can actively participate. So that could be the professionals, that could be the consumers with the various solution they can activate. For me, that's crucial because if that's not the case, it will not work for sure. I think in terms of regulations, it's going in the right direction, but there is still kind of a level of disintermediation that needs to happen in this market, like it happens in many sectors, like to give a last example, in the banking sectors 30 years ago, when you want to trade on the stock market, you need to call your banker. Why I'm a prosumer, why I could not trade my energy directly on the market?
Mariana?
Yes, I can wrap up on this also. So I think energy transition is moving much faster than the change in the grid renewal. So I think one of the biggest challenges here is to guarantee that the grid and the existing infrastructure won't block the ongoing energy transition and won't be the bottleneck here. So when we think that the existing infrastructure is a fixed asset and can be changed from day to night, I would point as the biggest challenge how we can really find intelligent ways to optimize the existing infrastructure, either to flexibility, storage, or other alternatives to be explored, while at the same time, because it's not possible to reach everywhere, guarantee that we are able to do really tactical investments in the grid upgrade. So,
Perfect, thank you. Ed and Kristjan, let's have 1 minute each, some final thoughts.
Okay, from our group perspective, what we find are important topics. Of course, transforming our production portfolio is one of them. But working with flexibility services from the let's say system regulation point of view, but also demand side regulation. Also, storage is big topic, and what we are also very active with is as you said, cannot be the bottleneck. So the e-mobility is definitely something that will have a big impact on this topic, and this is also what we are working with. So maybe 3 or 4 main topics. And hydrogen as well. We didn't talk about that, and maybe. All right. I will give you the opportunity to finalize.
Thanks, Kristjan. I think the answer is very simple, because any other answer is too complex to comprehend. We have to get the basics right. And one of the basic building blocks, because there are many, smart meter rollouts. The grid decarbonization is going to be built on the shoulder or on the stepping stone of data. And if you don't have data, you can't do any of the smart stuff we've been talking about on stage. Can't do any of it, or very little of it. So I applaud Germany in, I think, hopefully getting their act together and moving from 0.02% to 100% by smart meter rollout by 2030. That will underpin their ability to decarbonize, but we've got to see it everywhere. It's a much bigger topic, but let's get the basics right. Start with smart meters.
Perfect. Thank you for all of your thoughts and ideas. Thank you also for the audience for sticking it out until the very end. And then I wish you all a very good evening.